Welcome to the deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We know that when you're prepping for the NMLS SAFE exam, it's the little things, right? The subtle differences that can really trip you up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So today, we're tackling one of the biggest, pre-qualification versus pre-approval. And this isn't just, basic terminology. This is where the exam tests your technical knowledge, your ethics, everything.
That's exactly right. You miss the nuance here, you're just giving away easy points. So our mission today is pretty clear. We're going to look past the labels and focus on the action. What did the borrower actually do?
And what did the MLO actually verify?
Exactly. That process, that flow, that is the key to getting the answer right on test day.
Okay, so we're going to walk through it all, point out the traps. And by the way, if you are enjoying these NMLS Safe Study Deep Dives, please subscribe, like, and comment. Let us know what topic you want next, or even just what state you're tuning in from.
Yeah, it really helps the channel grow and lets us reach more people who are studying for this thing.
It really does.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Where do we start? The most casual step.
The most casual step, that's pre-qualification. It is the absolute earliest, least formal part of the whole journey. When you hear pre-qualification, your brain should immediately go to initial estimate.
An estimate. Oh.
Yeah, it's just designed to give a borrower a ballpark figure, what they might be able to afford, so they can at least start looking in the right price range.
And for the exam, the mechanics of this are what's really important. So what's the key thing about the documentation for pre-qual?
Well, it's the lack of documentation. The information is almost always self-reported.
So just what the borrower tells you.
Exactly. A borrower calls you up, maybe they fill out a quick form online, and they just guess. They estimate their income, estimate their debt, give you a general idea of their credit. There's no requirement for them to send you anything, no pay stubs, no tax returns.
So if a borrower says, I make $100,000, I've got $50,000 in the bank, the MLO just takes that at face value and runs the numbers.
That's it. You're giving an opinion based on limited, and this is the key word, unverified information. I mean, you might not even pull a full credit report.
Right.
Yeah, maybe a soft inquiry, which just gives you a score range. It's not the deep, detailed history a lender actually needs.
So the big takeaway for a test taker is that pre-qualification is just an estimate. It's an opinion, kind of like a fancy online calculator.
A very fancy calculator.
Yeah.
And that lack of verification is exactly why it doesn't carry much weight with sellers. A pre-qual letter, it just doesn't mean much because nothing's been proven.
Okay, let's bring in the ethics here because I know the exam loves to test this.
Mm-hmm.
If it's only an estimate, what's the MLO's obligation when they're talking to the borrower?
You have to be crystal clear. You cannot, under any circumstances, misrepresent a pre-qualification as an approval, not even conditionally approved.
Why not?
Because it's a deceptive practice. The entire SAFE Act is built on protecting the consumer, and telling someone they're approved when they aren't is a huge ethical and regulatory line to cross.
So even if you're like 99% sure they'll get the loan, you can't use that word, approved.
Nope. The second you use language that suggests a final decision, you've breached that principle of transparency. It's an estimate of affordability, period. That distinction is everything on the exam.
Okay, so that's the casual chat. Now let's get into the more serious stage. Pre-approval. What is the fundamental, the absolute defining difference here?
It all comes down to one word: verification. If pre-qualification is a guess, pre-approval is an audit.
An audit. I like that.
Yeah, it's a deep, detailed review and verification of pretty much the borrower's entire financial life. This is where the lender stops taking their word for it and starts confirming every single detail.
So let's break that down for the listener. What specific documents are we talking about? What's getting pulled and verified for a pre-approval?
Oh, the list is long. You're pulling a full tri-merged credit report, not a soft inquiry. You're analyzing their debt-to-income ratios with actual verified numbers. And the lender is going to want to see 2 years of tax returns, your most recent pay stubs, W-2s, and usually 2 or 3 months of bank statements to verify you have the cash for a down payment.
That is a lot of work, especially if the borrower hasn't even found a house yet. So why go through all that so early?
Because the lender is actually running the file. They're putting it through an automated underwriting system, an AUS like Fannie Mae's desktop underwriter. That system takes all those verified documents and it applies the lender's rules to see if the borrower is actually eligible.
So a free approval isn't just an MLO saying, yeah, this looks pretty good. It's a system or a human underwriter saying, based on the confirmed data, this person fits our criteria.
Precisely. And that's what gives a pre-approval letter its power in the real world. When a seller gets an offer with one of those, they know the heavy lifting has already been done. This loan is much less likely to fall apart.
Okay, but, and here's the trap I see people fall into. Even with all that, a pre-approval is still conditional. What does conditional actually mean here?
It means the lender is saying, we will lend you this money
If what?
if a few big things check out. And those things are almost always about the property. The loan is subject to a good appraisal, making sure the house is worth the price.
Okay.
It's subject to a clean title search. And, crucially, it's subject to the borrower still having their job right before closing.
So the pre-approval is about the person, but the final commitment is about the property.
You got it. You could have a perfect borrower, but if that house appraises for $50,000 less than the offer price, that pre-approval is basically worthless for that deal.
Okay, this is a perfect transition. Let's talk about the specific SAFE exam traps. Let's start with that documentation trap.
The verification trap. It's on there all the time. The test will give you a long scenario, lots of details, a borrower talking to an MLO. But if it mentions the MLO requesting and checking pay stubs or tax return,
It's always pre-approval.
it's always pre-approval. Because pre-qual, by definition, doesn't have that verification step. If docs were checked, it's the more formal stage.
What about the language trap? We touched on the ethics, but how does the exam test the words you use?
You have to watch out for absolutes. Any answer choice with words like guaranteed, final commitment, fully approved, it's almost certainly wrong.
Because it's always conditional.
It's always conditional, right up until you're at the closing table. An MLO is never fully obligated to fund the loan just based on a pre-approval.
Okay, let's run 2 quick scenarios just to hammer this home.
Let's do it. Scenario 1. MLO gets an email from a buyer. He lists his salary, says he has about $15,000 in credit card debt. The MLO emails back a PDF saying he's eligible for up to $500,000. What stage is that?
Okay, action analysis. The borrower just stated numbers. No documents were sent or verified. The MLO gave a range. That's textbook pre-qualification. It's an opinion based on a guess.
Perfect. Scenario 2. A borrower submits a formal application. MLO runs a full credit pull, gets a 740 score. The borrower uploads their last 2 pay stubs. The AUS comes back with an accept recommendation contingent on finding a property.
Okay. The second you said runs the credit pull and uploads pay stubs, that's verification. The AUS analysis means underwriting has started. That is, without a doubt, pre-approval. The trick is not to get thrown by the word contingent.
Exactly. People see contingent and they think it's less formal,
Yeah.
but the conditionality is what defines pre-approval. It doesn't change the fact that the borrower's finances have been vetted.
Okay, let's get into some advanced scenarios because the ethical questions are often tied to these conditions. So, stressful situation. Borrower's pre-approved, they have a signed contract. A week before closing, they get laid off. Is the lender still on the hook?
Absolutely not. And you need to know that answer fast on the exam. Losing a job is the classic material change in their financial situation. The pre-approval was conditional on them maintaining that job, so the lender is completely within their rights to withdraw the offer. They are not obligated to fund that loan.
Makes sense. It's a snapshot in time. What about the timing of the letter itself? Say someone gets pre-approved, but then they can't find a house for, I don't know, 8 months. Is that letter still good?
No way. Highly unlikely. Pre-approvals aren't lifetime passes. They're very time sensitive. Usually they expire after 60 or 90 days.
Why so short?
Well, credit reports expire, market conditions change, lender guidelines change. If a pre-approval is that old, the borrower has to start the verification process all over again.
So on the exam, the borrower waits 6 months. The MLO's next step isn't to resubmit the old letter. It's to get new documents and pull new credit.
Precisely. You have to re-verify. Always.
Let's do another ethical test. An MLO has a client who's pre-qualified. They keep losing out on houses because sellers want a pre-approved buyer. So to help them out, the MLO just changes the letterhead to say pre-approval estimate. Oof. Right. What happens?
It's deceptive practice. Simple as that. The MLO is intentionally trying to mislead people about the status of that file. The exam is testing if you understand the spirit of the law, which is all about accuracy and transparency. Trying to game the system, even if you think you're helping, is a huge violation.
That transparency is the key. Let's wrap with one final comparison that makes the value crystal clear.
Okay, imagine 2 identical buyers. Same job, same credit score, same cash in the bank. Buyer 1 submits an offer with a pre-qual letter from a phone call. Buyer 2 submits an offer with a pre-approval letter backed up by verified bank statements and an AUS finding. In a competitive market, who wins?
The pre-approved offer, every single time.
Of course. The seller is trying to reduce their risk. They know the pre-qual is a coin flip, but the pre-approved buyer has already cleared the first major hurdle.
Right.
And understanding that risk is why this is tested so heavily. These ideas are the foundation of the whole mortgage process.
So, to really bring this home for everyone studying, let's boil it all down to 3 essential questions you have to ask when you see one of these scenarios on the exam.
Right. When you read the question, just ignore all the extra noise. Just ask yourself these 3 things.
Give us that checklist.
1. Was the information verified? Did the MLO see actual documents? 2. Was underwriting performed? Did a system like an AUS analyze the file?
Okay.
And 3. Was a final non-conditional commitment made? If the answer to 1 or 2 is yes, you're in pre-approval. If the answer to number 3 is ever yes, that's a red flag. It's probably a trick answer.
Those 3 questions, that's the shortcut right there. That cuts through all the noise the test writers throw.
Exactly. It all comes back to transparency and verification.
And as you keep building that knowledge, just a quick reminder, if you are enjoying these NMLS SAFE Study deep dives, please subscribe, like, and comment. Tell us which topic you want us to cover next, or even just what state you're listening from. It really does help us grow the channel.
And I'll leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. Even though pre-approval is the more complicated process, it's actually pre-qualification that carries the biggest risk of consumer misunderstanding. So since the SAFE exam is all about consumer protection, think about this. How many different ways can the test writers frame a question about the misrepresentation of a pre-qualification? It all ties back to that ethical need for clarity. Mull that over.